Hey, Walter Sorrells back with more tips for the knife maker. Today, know your belt grinder. So I've done some videos in the past that really go into a lot of detail about belt grinders. This one is just a quick and dirty kind of intro for folks who are maybe just getting started in knife making and are thinking about buying a belt grinder. Just kind of a general introduction. So if you're one of those guys who's a junkie of my videos and's watched hundreds of them, you may have run into some videos that seem pretty similar to this basic idea. But I'm really trying to kind of tighten this up for people who are just really getting started and giving a real quick and dirty introduction to the belt grinder. Alright, so let's start with some of the basic operations of the machine. I'm going to be showing my workhorse belt grinder, Bader B3 2x72 grinder, but there are plenty of other excellent grinders. As you can see, they take a lot of abuse, but the best ones like this last for ages. There are other great belt grinders out there too though, so don't think this is the only good one available. Belt grinders are typically described by the size of belt they use. As in this case, the most common grinders used by knife makers employ 2x72 inch belts, meaning it's 72 inches long and 2 inches wide. The belt loops around a drive wheel here, a tracking wheel here, and then some sort of grinding surface, which we'll get into later. In some cases, the drive motor is also a tracking wheel, and in some other cases, the grinding surface is mounted directly to the motor. Again, more later. This model has a 1.5 horse motor, which works well for me, but you can get more or less powerful ones. Most pro models use totally enclosed motors with cooling fans, or so-called TEFC motors. If you use an open motor, abrasive dust will get inside and chew them up eventually. You'll never be sorry you bought the best motor available. Some models, especially homemade ones, use belt transmissions, but the Bader's motor attaches directly to the drive wheel. So, to mount the belt, I push this handle down, releasing pressure on the belt, remove the old belt, and then put the new one on and let go of the handle. You can use pneumatic pressure or springs to apply tension, but the basic principle is you got to have something to hold that belt on. Now every belt is slightly different. They're rotating really fast, and if the belt isn't adjusted correctly, they'll just fly right off the machine. The answer to this is called a tracking wheel. The way it works is that the tracking wheel here has a little crown on it, and by adjusting the tilt of the wheel with this little handle, you can make the belt track back and forth, like so. Quick tip, you'll notice I actually put masking tape on my wheel. The crown of the wheel will wear over time, and by putting some masking tape on here, I can maintain that crown and minimize wear on the wheel. Probably not recommended by the manufacturer, but if you don't do something like this, periodically the wheel has to be recrowned. The tracking mechanism is one of the big wear items on a grinder because you generally have to tweak it each and every time you change belts. I've actually changed out the factory knob and various parts of the tracking system at least 3 or 4 times in the 20 years since I bought this machine. All pretty easy fixes, but necessary in order to keep the machine running. Alright, now we come to the money part of the grinder, the grinding surface. This basically breaks down to 2 types, contact wheels and everything else. The Bader changes attachments with this quick release arm here. Some grinders only have 2 wheels and may or may not have other attachments built into the machine. That makes for a simpler machine, but also a somewhat less versatile one. Contact wheels are referred to by diameter. In this case, the wheel is 10 inches in diameter. You can go up to as much as 14 inches on some machines and down to as small as an inch or less. If you're doing hollow grinding, you'll typically use a contact wheel. My recommendation for hollow grinding is to use as large a wheel as your machine will admit. Let me jump in here to mention that today's video is sponsored by Combat Abrasives. They're a family-owned American manufacturer offering a wide selection of belts. Now, I've used many of their belts, including ceramic, aluminum oxide, and zirconium. The prices are good, and their focus is specifically on the knife-making community. Their basic aluminum oxide belts come in at a good price point and last a lot longer than some of the inexpensive belts that I've used in the past. Another thing that I've really been excited about is their ceramic belts for roughing in the 40, 60, and 120 grit range. Their performance is very competitive with the big manufacturers at about half the price. So check out their online shop by clicking the link in the description. Now to attachments. In this case, I'm using a flat platen. I've added a little attachment to the factory version, but it basically just consists of two so-called idler wheels and a flat surface that supports the belt. Flat surface, flat grind. Personally, I use this one for most of my grinding work, grinding bevels, and so on. Other attachments include slack grinders and a variety of special purpose surfaces. A slack grinder is useful for grinding handles, for convex bevels, and other grinding tasks where you want to do lots of smooth blending. You may want to add a work rest or work table to your grinder. The distinction is basically between a very small rest and a large one, which would be typically called a table. I made this table myself, a fairly complex mod to the grinder. If you're planning on grinding using a jig, you'll need some sort of support like this to hold your jig. There are all kinds of other attachments available for these machines, but I'm not going to get into them here. I installed the power switch here after the factory switch wore out, so mine just has two speeds, on and off. But you can buy models with variable speed controls, or you can retrofit them with variable frequency drives, also known as VFDs. I bought mine this way a long time ago and got used to running it at full speed all the time, but I'd highly recommend a variable speed control if you can afford it. One of the most common questions I get from viewers is what sort of belts to get when they buy a new machine. Belts come in a bewildering variety, so let's break it down. Belts can be divided up by grit size, abrasive type, backing, and in some cases by the actual material of the belt. Let me break this all down, then when I wrap up, I'll make some starter set recommendations for you. First, grit size. Grit refers to the size of the little sand-like grains of abrasive that coat the belt. The smaller the number, the bigger the grit, and therefore the more aggressive the cutting action. The general rule of grinding is you absolutely want to do as much work with the fast-working heavy grits as you can, then move progressively to higher grits, erasing all evidence of the prior belt scratch pattern as you go. Typically, knife makers start with 30 to 60 grit belts, then move up to higher grits like 120, 220, and 320 as they go. If you're outside the US, the grit designations are different, but the basic idea is the same. The composition of the abrasive also differs. Most common and cheapest is aluminum oxide. More expensive, but also more robust, are ceramic abrasives. Other abrasives are available including ruby, diamond, silicon carbide, and so on, but they're not used for most basic knife-making operations. Finally, the backing of the belts can differ. There's typically an alphabetic designation, with softer and more flexible backing being towards the beginning of the alphabet. J-weight is a common flexible backing, and heavier stiff backings are designated with letters closer to the end of the alphabet, like X and Y. Finally, the composition of the belt. Most belts are cloth with abrasives stuck to them, but there are also belts made from things like cork and soft plastic mesh, as is found in so-called conditioning belts, similar to 3M's Scotch-Brite. So I've got two basic recommendations about belts. The first involves basically the grit sizes. Start with 36 or 40 grit ceramics. I really prefer ceramics for hogging off material. They last just a lot longer than aluminum oxide belts. Now you're going to pay a premium for it, but if it costs 2 or 3 times as much, but you get 10 times as much use out of it, hey, it's a win. I also recommend 60 grit ceramics. Once you start getting up into the 120, 220, 320, that sort of range, I usually switch over to aluminum oxide. Now, there are a lot of other alternatives, but for basic operations, I would say aluminum oxide is kind of the good starter position. So if you're just getting started, I'd recommend buying about 10 each of all those basic grits, the 60 grit and 40 grit or 36 grit, depends on the manufacturer, ceramic belts. And then when you move up to aluminum oxide, another 10 of 120, 220, 320, maybe 400, maybe even 600. So my second recommendation is buy as many different kinds as you can and then experiment with them. Ceramics, structured abrasives, which we didn't really talk about, aluminum oxide, soft ones, hard back ones, and then there are all kinds of additional belts, cork and conditioning belts, surface conditioning belts, all kinds of stuff. The more that you put into it up front, the more different kinds that you try, the more you're going to find that you really have a lot of options, and that some options work much, much better in certain situations than others. Now, I could tell you all the things that I do, and I've got some other videos that I do that, but really you have to go out and find with your machine, your touch, your aesthetic, whatever it is that you're aiming for, you've got to experiment and find the stuff that really works for you. So if you want more information on these subjects, I've got links in the description, and you can go check out some of those others that'll lead you to more details if you're the kind of guy who really wants to drill down here and get lots more information. All right, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching, guys. If you feel like you got something out of this video, don't forget to subscribe. Also, click on the link to Patreon for a great way to give back to the channel. Plus, check me out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Links in the description. If you want something sharp and pointy, maybe a gift for yourself or one of the cooler people in your life, check out my Tactics Armory website and pick up one of our tactical or outdoor knives. And finally, if you want to learn to make Hamones or Japanese swords, check out WalterSorrellsBlades.com, where you can find videos about how I make Hamones, as well as forging, mounting, polishing, and fittings for Japanese swords. Thanks, and see you soon.